Well, here we are again.
Show number 2, Strategic Maine.
So a couple of pretty great guys, actually, this show.
We've got 2 terrific Maine employers this morning, Mark Bancroft and Jack Parker from Bancroft Contracting and Reed & Reed.
So they got a whole host of interesting challenges to deal with in business, regulatory issues, investment.
Workforce availability, yes, these are the experts on the front lines of job creation in Maine.
I'm Joel.
I'm Joe.
This is Strategic Maine. Welcome back to Strategic Maine. I'm Joel Allenbaugh, and to my left we have my co-host Joe Edwards. We have President and CEO of Reed & Reed, Jack Parker, and President and CEO of Bancroft Contracting, Mark Bancroft. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you.
And Jack, if you don't mind, I'll start with you with a question. I was reading recently, I don't know if it was Maine Biz, but I was noticing that Reed & Reed recently made an acquisition, and what goes into a decision like that?
Well, interestingly, it's the kind of a decision that people make every day and they don't even realize it. I'll give you an example. Let's just say you work for a good employer and you get a bonus at the end of the year because they had a good year. And so
Meaning I don't work for Mark.
Right.
Right, okay.
and so you have this money, you just have to decide what to do with it. And you can cash the check and put the money under your mattress, or you can invest it. So you go downtown and there are 2 banks in your town. You go into bank number 1. And you wait about 15 minutes, and finally somebody wanders over and says, "Can I help you?" And you say, "You'd like to invest your money." So they give you a 6-page questionnaire to fill out. You wait around, you fill it out. Finally, they tell you did it wrong, and they make you do it again. And then after that process, they say, "Okay, we'll let you know in 2 or 3 weeks if you can invest your money here." You say, "Well, that's not very attractive." So you go to bank number 2 next door. And somebody smiling greets you at the door. They give you a 1-page questionnaire. They help you fill it out. And they say, "You can invest your money here. We'll put it to work for you when you walk out the door." So which bank do you choose? Well, you choose bank number 2. And a lot of times, I think states are viewed as banks, and sometimes the investment climate in Maine is more like bank number 1 than bank number 2. And people who make those decisions every day take all those things into account, and we can talk more about the factors that they take into account. But remember the bank analogy, because that's really about how investments get made. People make those same decisions every day.
Well, Mark, you've talked to me. I guess first of all, I'd like to know a little bit about what Bancroft Contracting does, but you've also talked to me about the fact that notwithstanding the investment you've got in your company, your success is still dependent on customers.
That's right.
You don't get to build anything until someone wants it built.
Right.
And so the general economic level of activity impacts everything you do. So what is it you do, and how do your customers impact that?
Bancroft Contracting's been in business for 40 years now. My dad started it, and I'm spent a career trying not to finish it. We're a self-employed general contractor, self-performing general contractor. That means my employees do most of the work, as opposed to me subbing it out with different subcontractors doing the work. And so my employees are my product. My skilled workforce to the job site is the product that Bancroft Contracting sells. And we work primarily for private customers, such as manufacturers like paper mills and power companies that generate electricity. Mostly we work in the hydroelectric field for that work. And what's good for my customers is good for me, period. I don't make decisions about capital investments on behalf of my customers. They decide. They own companies and assets across North America and beyond. They have to make a decision, like Jack talked about, where are we going to invest? And if there's no investment in Maine in the kind of work that I do, then I don't have any work, and I have to go elsewhere to get it done. And we work, we're working in 6 states right now around New England and New York, and we have to go away to find work because there's not enough of it here in the type of work that we do. And again, these are some of the things we're talking about today. Is why is that?
And do you have the same dynamic where you take jobs out of state? And it might be helpful also to give us a quick recap of what Reed & Reed does.
Sure. We've been in business since 1928, building bridges, energy infrastructure, wind farms, marine facilities, things like that. And like Mark, we're always wondering where the next project comes from. And a lot of our work is public sector, but a lot of it's private sector. And those private sector companies, like Mark said, have choices about where they invest. And when they invest, they create jobs. And when they invest in projects that we build, we create jobs. And if that investment doesn't take place, the jobs don't exist. It's really simple.
What impacts the investment decision?
Well, in my early life after school, I worked for a Fortune 500 company in Chicago. And my job was to analyze investments that the company made. We had 45 divisions, and every year, each one of those divisions would make capital requests to the company. And let's just say they added up to $500 million. And these were all investments that each division wanted to make in their operation to maybe grow their business, to expand their business. And if there were $500 million worth of requests and we had $200 million worth of capital investment to make, part of my job was to recommend which ones we invested in and which ones we didn't. So I would look at tax rates, I would look at regulatory policy, I would look at legislative stability, I would look at energy costs, I would look at all kinds of factors and rank the projects. And that's how investment works. And that's how the companies that invest in Maine, whether it's in hydroelectric facilities or paper mills or places like that, they make decisions the same way. It's really simple. And so what you look for is a stable regulatory environment and an attractive place to do business.
But you're talking, I mean, if I try to categorize those things, it's costs.
Absolute cost and risk. And risk
and ease of doing business and stability.
Right. So risk and uncertainty is the enemy of investment, right? Go back to my bank. If that bank says, well, we'll pay you 2% on your investment bank, number one, or maybe we won't, or maybe you have to wait a year to find out if we'll pay you that 2%, where you don't go there. So you have choices. And people who invest large amounts of money in large companies, they have choices. And they look for certainty investment, certainty of climate, and a return. That's what they're in business to do.
So Maine's the oldest state in the nation. We have more deaths than births, which is a pretty scary statistic in and of itself. So your customer makes the decision to make the investment. You now have a job to perform, whether it's one company or the other. I know, Mark, you've talked about this numerous times over the years. What's the challenge with getting the actual employees? Where's the workforce come from?
That's a huge challenge for both Jack and I and employers all over. You can't drive down the street anywhere in Maine and not see a help wanted sign. There's people are needed. There's a vacuum of skilled workforce coming to us, which is just a huge problem. It's a limiting reagent for me. I've turned down jobs for my biggest customers in Maine because of lack of people. While I'm moving to jobs in New York and Massachusetts and Connecticut, I've turned down work in Maine because I don't have enough people to do it. So
if you have that same job in New York, do you hire employees in New York to perform that job, or do you take people from Maine to New York?
Some of each. It's all about timing. The jobs away started before these jobs in Maine got offered. So my employees from here go there, and we try to hire some locally as well. But it's a mixture. But again,
you're not just missing people, you're missing the right people.
That's right.
I mean, I'm a lawyer. Couldn't use me on any of your jobs. Utterly worthless.
He's got a job for you.
Shoveling some, yeah, right. But so you need the skill sets that are appropriate to your job requirements, and you're not getting them.
Yes, but honestly, if somebody shows up to work every day with a good attitude and can get to work and be there, I will train them. All I want is somebody to come to work and be there every day, and we'll teach them how to be a good construction worker.
So you're also in the training business.
We have to be.
But you have to be why?
Because there's not enough people coming in.
And it's not happening elsewhere in the education system.
Right. That's right. That's right. No, the technical schools don't seem to be pushing out as many people that we need as they used to. It seemed my observation is that the high schools seem to be pushing 4-year degrees, or we don't care what you do. There's not enough emphasis on the people that are not going to get 4-year degrees, and I think that's a problem.
While you're on camera here, Mark, I mean, we may reach out to the audience. What kind of people do you need in case somebody's watching?
Anything other than a lawyer.
Right, yeah. No, we get enough
well,
lawyers.
wait a minute. If I show up to work every day, he said he could train me.
I can. Carpenters, former carpenters, millwrights, highly skilled mechanics, welders, crane operators.
Jack, do you have the same issue?
Same issue, and the way I look at it is, people don't work for my company because they have to. They work for my company because they choose to. So it's our obligation and our responsibility to create a company culture a pay scale, a benefit package, and opportunity for advancement that makes people want to come to work for us. And sometimes that's hard, but that's how we attract good people. But we're the same as Mark. It's very difficult to attract good people into the industry now, and the trade schools, I think, are beginning some initiatives to help with that and bring more people into the workforce at a younger age.
What's your planning horizon, time-wise?
Well, besides next week,
Pretty sure I'll have lunch today.
Well, let's look at it this way. So some of the capital investments we make, like Mark has, we have cranes, and cranes have a lifespan of 30 to 40 years. And so we have to look way out into the horizon, 10, 15, 20 years, and say, what business opportunities will exist in those years to pay for those heavy equipment investments?
So you've got a crane has a life expectancy of 30 years.
At least.
At least. How many cranes is it a secret how many cranes Reed has in operation?
I think we have 28.
All right, so you're managing 28 machines, each of which has a 30-year life expectancy.
At least.
So that means one a year.
Cranes are as old
Just
as mine.
about one a year.
Yeah.
You're turning over.
So we're always wondering, where's the next job going to come from, the next project that we can put that crane to work on, because if we can't put it to work, it sits in the yard. And its capital is tied up. And then we have that opportunity cost thing where we say, should we let a $400,000 crane sit in the yard, or should we sell it, take that money and invest it somewhere else? And those are the same decisions that all businesses have to make.
And those decisions, again, are driven by the opportunity that you might have for other jobs and the stability of the environment and the certainty that you can put it to work. Right. And so that leads back to the issues of capital stability, regulatory ease, and having an available workforce.
That's right. And every analysis model that you put together when you make an investment, you assume some growth rate of revenues, right? Every state, every budget is based on a revenue growth rate. But if you don't have that growth, if you're stagnant, it's very difficult to make an investment decision work.
Well, and you said something about opportunity cost, and I think that's something we may want to talk a little bit more in the next segment, because I'm not sure it's something that everyone understands what that really means. But thank you all for joining us. Stay with us. We'll be back.
Throughout most of its history, Maine has been a resource-based economy. Paper making, farming, fishing, and forestry have provided foundational jobs for generations of working people. But all of those sectors are in decline and will not carry Maine into the future. Maine is now the nation's oldest and getting older faster than any other state because there aren't enough quality jobs for young people. The future belongs to cutting-edge technologies, computers, virtual reality, self-driving cars, improvements in sanitation and energy, DNA research, biotechnology, urban design, transportation, nutrition, and other 21st century innovations. The future belongs to those who work smarter, innovate, and solve problems. Maine is being left behind. There's no long-term strategy to attract the jobs, people, and investment that will provide the economic foundation for our children and grandchildren. We need a plan.
Welcome back to Strategic Maine. Jack, you were saying certainty, stability, economic growth. That's sort of the foundations that you need. So how's the state of Maine doing with that?
Well, as I said earlier, uncertainty is the enemy of investment. And I'll give you an example. We're in the wind business. We've built most of the wind towers in Maine. It's a business that since 2006, over $2 billion has been invested in Maine in wind projects. And it's been a great opportunity for our employees and our company and our subcontractors.
Competitors.
And our competitors, because we've been busy doing other things,
Exactly.
right?
Leaving me alone. Leaving me alone where I work.
So about 2 years ago, there were a number of large wind projects on the horizon, large, tall towers, and we needed a bigger crane to erect these towers. So we were pretty enthusiastic about the opportunity. We invested about $7 million in a crane that will lift almost 800 tons, 500 feet in the air. It's a big investment for us. And then all of a sudden, the legislative and the regulatory environment changed. And right now, that for the past year, that crane has been sitting in our yard for about 8 months. We've managed to rent it out of state for 3 months, and I don't know what we're going to do with it afterwards. So this is a perfect example of why you need certainty in investment. It's a long-term investment that we made based on certain assumptions about the regulatory and political environment, and the rug got pulled out from under our feet.
Have you tried selling that crane to Mark?
I would love to. I'll sell it to Mark for $8 million.
I've been checking at Uncle Henry's. I haven't seen it, so you could advertise that thing better.
When you talk about a big project like that, so you got a piece of equipment, you need to be able to lift heavy stuff up in the air.
Right.
But when you talk about a big project, give us some scale of that. Like, how many employees are we talking when you go on one?
So first of all, some of those jobs, just the construction part of those jobs alone, is over $100 million worth of work added to the Maine economy. We've done several projects that size in Maine, and with that $100 million gets spent on our employees, on benefits for our employees, on taxes of every type you can imagine, income taxes, excise taxes, sales taxes, on and on and on, and then we hire subcontractors who do other parts of the work that we don't self-perform. So we have earthwork contractors, foundation rebar contractors, and all these companies are spending money in the Maine economy. They're going to motels, they're going to hardware stores, they're going to lumber yards, they're buying pickup trucks, they're having their equipment serviced. So the flow-down effect throughout the Maine economy is enormous. The multiplier effect, we call it, and it's somewhere around 2.5x times $100 million. So those are huge impacts in the state of Maine.
$250 million.
Yeah, from one project.
Right.
Mark, Jack's described some of the obstacles to his success. What about you?
Again, it's all about what's good for my customers. I keep saying that. I can figure out how to manage my company one way or another, whether I have to export my people out of state to do the work or whatever. What in Maine, what needs to happen is our customers need to be able to make good decisions to write checks here. Recently there were 2 tissue machines built in eastern Maine. That's a real big piece of progress. I mean, and I was just up there last week. They're making money. They're doing a good job. And there was a guy there doing a feasibility study on another machine or 2 up there. And he's narrowed it down to Maine or Texas, where his company from China is going to invest in another tissue machine. And he said, there's pluses and minuses to both Texas and Maine. One of the ones that's a negative in Maine is the legislative uncertainty of what kind of deal can they get from the state to come here with tax incentives and everything else. And one of the many positives about Maine is it's got an incredible amount of fiber. There's trees everywhere, and there's plenty of it to go around, and the pulp mill has capacity to take more, but somehow we've got to get those guys over the line to build another machine.
Why does Bancroft Contracting care about a tissue machine?
Because that's, we played a significant hand in building the last one, the last 2 that were up there. We had over 100 people there in a hotel. We rented the whole hotel at the end of Route 9 for over a year. It was a big investment.
You guys went to restaurants and
absolutely
hardware stores and bought gasoline and
bought
clothes
trucks, like you said, and supported their families. Lived well, had a good employment in Maine, which is nice. And my guys would rather drive 4 hours to Maine than 3 hours to Massachusetts any day. So it's an incredible opportunity when you can put people to work in Maine. And now that company is exporting our fiber and our labor and our skill in the name of toilet paper to states all over New England.
To the extent you guys watch public policy, what's your perception of the extent to which public policy in Maine understands and supports the kind of activity and job creation that you're describing?
Well, sometimes I think public policy in Maine is a random event. It's made by referendum. It's made by the legislature. It's made by regulatory agencies. It's made by any source that you want. And when you have it coming at you from every direction, who knows what you're going to get from year to year. Every year the legislature convenes, there are, 1,000 bills submitted, and some of those affect...
1640, I read them all.
Okay, and good for you.
Not really.
And some portion of those, probably a large portion, all have the potential to affect our businesses in one way, to drive up our costs, to create uncertainty, to make it a little more difficult to run your business every day. And
so you must spend a lot of time at the legislature educating the legislators when those bills come up, and is that the majority of your time?
Let me see, how shall I answer that? I have been to the legislature from time to time, and it's always eye-opening. because some of the questions that you get from legislators, I don't think they understand how basic economics work. And I'm not saying that to criticize all the legislatures. Some are very good, hard workers, perceptive, but there are a lot who need to learn a lot.
Right. And they're elected by people who need to learn a lot.
Yeah.
You know, that's the thing, is we need to, somehow the education needs to be gotten out there of what is important to success in Maine. And for me, it's manufacturing. That's my mantra. If we can make things here and put it in a truck and ship it over the border, truck it over the border, that's progress. That's the only way we're gonna survive.
And you talk about that. We've had this discussion off camera a bunch of times about this whole concept of foundational jobs. So a job does not equal a job, does not equal a job. When you say manufacturing is the key, making stuff, shipping it out, why? What does that mean?
Well,
what's different about that than another job?
We can't keep, you know, handing the same $20 bill to each other around the table for mowing each other's lawns and doing each other's laundry. We've got to make something and get people from away to write us checks for that product.
Are you saying that you'll mow my lawn for $20?
I didn't say that, but I haven't seen your lawn.
Okay. Just checking.
All right. Okay. Good.
He's got a big place. You don't want to do that
Okay.
for
All
20
right.
bucks.
Then no.
But Mark is right. Unless investment capital flows into the state of Maine, jobs don't get created. It's really that simple. And if jobs don't get created, people don't have the income to spend in their local community, and the economy stagnates. It's that simple. And just to go back to what Mark said about this company that's considering Maine versus Texas for investment. So it's like my bank analogy. They're making a choice between two states, and one of the things they might look at is they say, well, are you going to enact another 3% income surtax on our income because we're going to make some money in this investment, and that's going to weigh into their decision. Things like that, and those uncertainties that happen as a matter of public policy really make it difficult to attract long-term capital.
Right.
Both of your companies started in Maine. So you said Dad.
Yep.
Yeah, we're a fifth-generation company.
Yeah. Do you think that makes a difference?
In what way?
Well, I just someone's going to make a decision about where to sort of invest that capital. I wonder how many of the companies that are operating in the state of Maine are here for other reasons. There are deep roots here. If your company was making a decision of where to locate, do you think it would necessarily land here?
Good question. Good question.
I actually talked to a CEO of one of the biggest companies in the state who had been courted by governors from other states. And he said it really didn't make economic sense to stay here, but they're Mainers, and they were going to stay. And they told the governors they weren't leaving. But one of the problems I think Maine has is that it's not able to attract. I mean, you look at our population, we're getting older, kids aren't staying, we're losing those jobs, the population's been stagnant, we're getting older fast. We are the oldest state age-wise, and we're getting older faster than everyone else. We're not attracting young workers, witness you guys don't have them, and we're not attracting the investment. So the people that are here. I mean, your businesses can't leave at this point. You wouldn't leave in this point in your career. Neither would I. I mean, we've had our careers here. But people who have a choice very clearly are not choosing Maine.
Right.
Well, and I see that there's an asset in this state. I mean, I'm sort of the same way. I'm a Farmington native. You come across the way life should be. I love to go fly fishing. You can do some of the best fly fishing in the world right here in the state. So there are a lot of things that are, I think, will naturally attract people here and attract people to stay here. It's a question of whether they can, and I think that gets to a lot of things that you're talking about today.
Yeah, I don't want to beat this to death, but it's about capital. So I was in New York a couple of years ago, and there were a bunch of issues pending in the legislature, and the CEO of a large company that wanted to invest several $100 million in Maine said, "Jack, what is going on in your state at the government level? What are they thinking?" And I don't think I had a very good answer. I said, "Oh, it'll be okay." But those
the way life should be.
the way it's but that's how people think who allocate capital. And we have to make the state more attractive to attract capital, because without the capital, we don't create the jobs.
To that point, Jack, we did some research with Alliance for Maine, and there were some articles, I think, in Maine Biz last year. I think in the fourth quarter of 2016, there was $3 million of venture capital invested in Maine. Mm-hmm. And they were saying there was a problem because in the first quarter of 2017, there was none. So we'd gone from $3 million in the fourth quarter of 16 to none in the first quarter of 17. So I looked at how much venture capital is invested in the United States every year. It's a little over $60 billion. Our per capita fair share on an annual basis in Maine would be $200 million. If we're 300 million Americans, there's a little more, we're 1 million people. We should be getting $200 million if we're just getting our fair share. And given where we are economically, we probably ought to be doing better than that. And you know, one measure of the effectiveness of our public policy and legislature is how effectively are we generating an environment that attracts capital. Well, we've got a fair share probably of around $200 million a year, and in the last 6 months, we've had 3. So that gives you some idea of how attractive people find investment here in the state.
So we could probably talk about this forever, but we don't have forever. But I think we covered a lot of good ground. I mean, I think it's pretty obvious that we need to bring more capital into the state than we're bringing in right now for everyone's benefit. Companies that are investing here as well as the employees that are benefiting from that. So thank you, Jack. Thank you, Mark. Really appreciate you coming in, joining us today. And folks, stay with us. We'll be right back.
Economies are built on foundational sectors that make and do things. Manufacturing, construction, transportation, and energy are some examples. Service and public sector jobs are important, but dependent upon the foundational sectors. If everyone worked for the government, they'd have to be taxed at 100% to pay themselves. All of the lawyers, accountants, teachers, financial advisors, insurance brokers, journalists, lobbyists, and legislators in the world wouldn't create 1 penny of wealth, actually improve living conditions, or provide food, clothing, and shelter. Jobs in foundational sectors pay for the service and public sectors. They create wealth, generate the capital necessary to improve operations and create jobs, and make it possible to provide police and fire protection, quality schools, and good government. Those jobs are dying in Maine, and there's no long-term strategy to maintain them or replace them. We need a plan.
Welcome back. What would you think?
Well, I mean, those are really 2 terrific guys. I mean, I think to some extent in the country lately, business gets cast or affected by the image of Lehman Brothers, Enron, Goldman Sachs, and you know, there's sort of all this information about the 1%. These people are real Mainers.
Right.
They do real work, they create jobs, they get things done, they build things, they make life better, they produce wealth. But they made it pretty clear they need people and capital.
Yeah, and these aren't the guys, I mean, these guys are out there doing the work every day. So they've got, you know, trucks to move and cranes to move and people to keep busy. You know, they don't have the time to always be up there. You know, you've spent time at the legislature. You know, the people who are there are the paid lobbyists who are there all the time. These aren't the guys who always have the time to go up there and say, hey, this is what we need. But these are the guys we need to be listening to.
And it's pretty clear public policy is not very informed by the complexity of issues that they have to address. I mean, a lot of things that are concerns to them are people are unaware of in Augusta, in the legislature, around the state.
Well, until now. Now they're aware.
Well, if they watch the show.
And hopefully they do. And we want you to watch. So please tune in next time for another edition of Strategic Maine.